by giving some context. It's 5 a.m. I haven't really slept much. I have to start work at 9 and I couldn't sleep because I keep thinking about wanting to make a video. I have no idea why. First thing, I just thought I've watched so many tutorials on YouTube and none of them really, there's not that many that cover explicit subjects on how to draw native work, how to draw commissions, etc. I don't know, I just thought, hey, might be cool if I drop my small opinion. It will be cool if I drop my opinion on it, especially since I've been drawing these kind of things for what, 6 years now? Anyways, that's some context. I'm probably gonna make a short version of this video and a long version of this video, one where I'm just japping and another one where I'm just go straight to the point, because I also don't want to waste people's time that much. Just preparing some quick bodies and poses to explain what's going on. And the reason why I'm putting this as part as the process is because I don't know about you guys, but I usually really enjoy watching that whole process. I hate when I go and watch speedruns, speed paints and all that shit, and it's just like the sketch is ready and they just straight into the line art, and I get it. It makes sense for people who don't really care about the whole process and they just want to see pretty colors and pretty goals straight away. But nah, I enjoy seeing the whole thing. I enjoy seeing the struggle, whatever. As you guys can see, like my sketches are super messy, loose, and disproportionate. I don't care about having correct proportions or having correct things, because at the end of the day, like the first draft main goal is to get a really good flow and make sure things make sense. Right, for example, here I know the chest should probably go more like here. You guys can see the middle of the chest is all the way here, and though the middle should be like what, here? But who cares? It's the flow. We're not worrying about anatomy right now. We can always clean it up later, but right now we just want to make sure it's understandable. So yeah, now, boobs. They're really easy to draw. I think I don't want to cover the super beginning mistakes everyone knows. So just don't draw 2 circles, right? It's gonna look like, what, 2 huge grapes, super stiff. It's gonna look like if you run towards it and you hurt yourself, like if you hit yourself, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be a rock, and then you're gonna be crying. You want squishy. You don't want to draw a circle, because circles, at least for me, they kind of look like big glass balls or whatever. It's kind of like stiff, and that applies to all geometrical shapes, right? So whatever drawing you're doing, if you want fluid stuff, you should completely ignore all of these. You need to know how to draw them, but you also need to know how to bend them so they look squishy, and you do that by applying gravity to them. And if this is made out of rock and you put gravity to it, it's gonna be like the floor is gonna break, whatever, right? But if this is made out of, like, I don't know, something squishier, soft, warm, something you can touch and your fingers will like go inside, and like, then gravity will turn these, will make it go down and do this kind of thing. But of course we're not just gonna draw that, because this is the equivalent of just having a fucking fuck, I shouldn't say fuck, damn it. This is the equivalent of having a, what's that word? Basketball, I think. And it just bends and then goes straight back to it. No, we want the squish. We want the good shit. We want to define where the ground is, so we know where it squishes. And then like these curves over here. And you have to think about it, right? You have to think. Because, for example, this is a slime, right? You have to think, if this slime was falling from the top, now it ended up on that situation, then in the next frame, he will go a little bit down, and then this squish will extend a little bit here, and then extend more towards here, just because of the nature of the material, right? So you will eventually, the more you squish it, start getting a lot of like curvature to it and these little arcs, and I'm probably just jabbing and like diverting a lot. But like if you see these little curves, it looks like you can just put a straw and just drink the whole thing, because of how soft it looks. It looks like you can touch it and it's gonna be nice, and that's kind of like the same feeling you want to go for. Usually for limes, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know, whatever. For the, you want to think of water balloons, right? I think people probably already saw this tip so much. But it's like the best one. I would say. Because, for example, think about it. If you add more water onto this water balloon, then it's gonna be like more like that, big and chunky and whatever. If the balloon is old and soggy, then it's gonna be like soggy and hangy, all that natural. So all the variations, and it has a pivoting point where it starts, which is very important to know for where you put them. Because, for example, let's say there's a wall and we have a nail, right? So you put the balloon there, you know that it's gonna interact with the wall like that, and then you're gonna have water like this. And you know that, let's say we have a wooden plank, and we move the wooden plank towards the balloon, knowing that there's a wall behind it, knowing that there's a pivot here, you will know where it's gonna squish, right? You will know it's gonna squish on the corners where it touches with the wall, and then it's gonna also squish with this wall, and you're gonna get these weird shapes. You have to like make sure you don't break the flow too much, but you get what I mean, right? The water is gonna be like, this is a terrible drawing, but you guys can see what I mean. It's gonna eventually land and formulate there, but the pivot is still here and it's not gonna move upwards or whatever, because the pivot is here, and if we keep going, eventually the balloon is gonna just fucking explode. But you get it, right? So if I think about those things, then you can think about how it interacts with other shapes. So like if I have a water balloon, right, and I just throw it into a box, it's gonna interact like this. It's gonna be like a bean, and the water is gonna like, due to gravity, it's gonna go like here, right? So you're gonna get something like that, and then you have to think about the pivot, and then you have like a very smooth and soft shape. Let's get to drawing then. So with what we just covered, I like to define the pivot. So I think about the nail. I like to define where the nail goes, and that usually is, I think it's called a B bone? Well, the B-shaped bone that's over here. I forgot the name. I would like to define the pivot around here. If you had water balloons over there, and you have, I start by drawing where the mass of water is. So they're over there, because I know the water is gonna be like here, and then you track towards that pivot. And then you have to think that this part, the abdomen or whatever this is called, this is flat. This is the fucking wooden plank that we were talking about. And it's gonna interact with that depending on the angle where we're seeing it. But since it's kind of like 3/4, there's really that much. But if you're drawing like a side view, it's very important for you to understand there's gonna be that squish interaction over there. Then you have two balloons and throw them together, they're not gonna be like this, which is another super issue. It's not really gonna be like two circles and then you just erase one of them. That looks too stiff. You want to understand that they're both soft shapes and they're fighting for that space. Oh, my mouse dying. So they're fighting for that space. So you have like this S shape that's both of them overlapping at the same time. It's kind of like two dudes kissing, or whatever. It's that S shape that of two things coinciding. And one way I really like, and with lines of overlapping of soft stuff, is just making one of the lines, the inner line, very thin. Sometimes even just completely break it. And you have like this idea of this looks two soft things, right? Two soft slimes colliding with each other. So you apply the same concept here, right? Where you have like that S shape, but you apply its softness. They're not really like pushing against each other, but if she was pushing against each other, just imagine two hands here, then you will probably do that. And this one will probably do the same, because the water will go up. You guys, you can understand what I mean? Do you get what I mean? Alright, we're talking about slimes here, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Another important thing to take in mind is how the muscle is made. And don't get me wrong, my anatomy is super bad. I do not know the name of any muscles, but the way I like to define it is you have a base of the balloon where the body water is held. Then you have this muscle over here, which its pivot is, right? And sometimes I even like to extend a small muscle over here that's connected to the armpit, right? That way, if the arm is lifting up, then the pivot of where the core of the slime is will go up, because it's lifting the arm. Try it yourself. You lift your arm, the pivot over the core of the slime goes up, just because the whole thing lifts up because of that muscle, which is kind of over here. And I like to draw it a lot because it makes Makes it look so much softer. Softer, not softer, softer. Right. Same here. So let's just whatever. We have that muscle that was like this, and then we have that muscle that's pulling towards the armpit. Whatever, right? And for example, here's an example of where it's being lifted up. And also the whole table thing that I was mentioning. If it's being lifted up, you have to consider that the pivot is not going to be here anymore. It's going to be like here, just because of where the arm is going. Here, where it's being really lifted up. And you get, let me lower the opacity of this and like change the color so it's easier to see. And you get this scenario where the core of the slime goes a little bit higher, right? Whereas if you're just looking down, the core of the slime will be a little bit down. Then the other thing you guys have to keep in mind is how gravity affects it. Because if you think, I really need to like, if you guys think about how gravity works, right, with balloons, imagine this, right? We have a stick and then we have two balloons with a string attached to it. Then you grab the string, like these balloons or whatever, and then you throw them, and then you have these two thingies, these two balloons colliding with each other depending on how tall they are. And since there's no pressure coming from the sides, they're not really gonna do like this, right? It makes no sense for them to do that. Rather than that, they're gonna have the gravity that's pulling them down, so the same logic as before, but then they're gonna be colliding with each other at the same time, which forms basically a straight line. Fairly straight line. That's also very soft, right? You have this, and when you have your character, which is like, let's say in this pose, whatever, you will have that same idea, the idea of the pivots being here, and then they're gonna collide with gravity at the same time. And then you have to think about those arm muscles as well. And just to clarify, the core of the slime, it's gonna be down here. Probably more like this, but you guys get what I mean. So let me draw this real quick and then we can approach coloring. Let's do this one. Just gonna merge this, lower the opacity. So as I said before, the actual anatomy and proportion of things are all over the place. I'm trying to do this really quick. For example, the head is way too big. That's a very easy fix. So that should be better. Doesn't really matter that much, does it? I like this. I've done better slimes, but works for the example. I should do it. Actually, the head's still too big, but I'm gonna use this tool instead. So let's do some quick flats. Nice. Yeah, I think I should cover it now so it doesn't get pissed. When it comes to drawing, coloring this, the way I like to think about it is how I think about coloring spheres. Or easier if I just, right? So when it comes to shadows for a sphere, you think about having the light coming from one place, right? And then that light, depending on the texture of the sphere, is gonna diffuse and soften, and maybe even have some bounce light to wear from the background or whatever, right? And then you have a sphere shaded. And when it comes to the shading, it's gonna convert from the shape of the actual sphere and whatnot. But then you have a very nice shaded sphere, which then you can just add highlights or whatever you want to them. As I said, I usually just shading the whole thing straight away. I just play with the actual colors, and let me use a normal brush because it's a bit harder to explain with this one. Let's move brush, I think. Right, so where the light goes, where the water will normally be, usually where the softer parts, where the light reaches. So these places, and then this place, and maybe the nose, and then you have like some of the cheek, right? Because I'm thinking the light is around here. If you use a little bit of it, so it emerges properly, and just soften it, and then start adding some of your hard lights based inside those lights you already put. And this is not a tutorial for coloring or lighting, but you better think about where the water is inside the balloons, where the softness, where the squishiness is coming from. And that's gonna help you make better decisions when coloring. Then let's actually connect this. I think as long as there's a small hint of that muscle, these two circles, we can connect them and make it look a bit better. Example here, think about this muscle, right? So the water will be around here. Just think about it as balloons. It's very easy to have that analogy. Think about surfaces, think about whatever, right? Whatever you want to think about. You just do your shading. You meet a missing sun. You add more shadows, and you start sculpting your shadows and your lights in. I'm not gonna go in detail because this is not a tutorial for that, but it does explain better. If you can add more shadows, remember at the end of the day there's just big spheres, you can add more shadow, whatever. You have to think of your contrast. Right now it looks kind of dirty because of the lack of contrasts, which I'm gonna fix by just doing a really quick shading on these clothes. Again, I'm not gonna go into too much detail because you guys don't care. If you guys do care, I'll do oopsie. If you guys do care, I'm happy to cover it better in another shading thing. Should have done cabbage too. Oh, purple looks cool. So when you finish with the base coloring, I usually just merge everything to one layer because, you know, who cares? And that's where I can start doing extra contrast to give more squishiness. So if you guys remember, I talk about this line, and you guys can even exaggerate more the squishiness of that line if you just turn it into a shadow rather than a line itself. Because lines in art just basically are just a vague representation of shadow. So you guys can use that to your advantage to make it a little bit speaky and softer. Same for surfaces like this, right? You guys can exaggerate the squishiness by adding a little bit more. And that means some water will be in there. So let's add a little bit of light, right? Fix shadow accordingly. Fix the line because again, it looks kind of weird if we just break the line there. I can't add it some, but it's very messy. You just start doing those very small fixes until you're happy with what you have. Now, here's a problem. This boob is way bigger than the other one. That can be fixed in many ways. The way I'm gonna approach this is just using the transformation there. I just plate it a little bit, then use this tool to drag it a little bit down, side, whatever. And just fix it, because another thing that's problematic here is that this is having a curve and this is more like a straight line. So let's try and follow the same curve that the other one has. We have to lower this a little bit. We can just lower it. No, there's no issue. The reason why I don't like to be too clean when I draw is because I like to have that freedom of fixing my mistakes and changing things around, of being subjected to a process. But that's just me. You work differently, that's completely fine. So one problem we have with this drawing is that there's absolutely no contrast. So let's add some contrast by adding bigger highlights. And also I love myself some shiny stuff, so let's add some here, maybe here. And coloring could be way better. The whole drawing could be way better, but I'd rather do this as fast as possible. It's been 42 minutes already. God damn, this, that's not a nice sound. Just to finish it, I'm just gonna add a little bit of big glow touch because I did not do a really great job when it comes to the, and maybe some stars on the body to look shinier. Let's add some, wow, I think this one, it's an extra light. So that should cover most of it. It's a lot of Jap ink, a lot of, god damn it, that works. Too tired, too late. It's but 1 hour. 1 hour is more than enough. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.